Tell me about last night.
So, last night I had a couple of interesting, what I would call night terrors, different from my typical night terrors I've had in the past, but very real. We'll just go and tell them. It was about 3:30 last night. I put Tierney back to sleep, and I came into the bedroom and laid down to go to bed. And as I closed my eyes, I was rolled over away from Aaron, facing the wall, and I saw this purple kind of color, just like a purple cloud, kind of come from the back of my vision up towards the front, and it was kind of like a hazy purple, and it just kept getting closer into my vision. So I opened my eyes because it felt uncomfortable, and I wanted to see if when I opened my eyes it went away, and it didn't. It was still right there, and so I moved over and it followed my vision, and so I ended up reaching over and grabbing my cell phone and turned on the light, and the color went away. So I was like, okay, this is just something going on in my head here, and just go back to sleep and not worry about it. And so I laid back down, and this color had become instead of a cloudy kind of hazy cloud, a more perfect like disc, and I saw these kind of waves emanating across it, kind of like if you were to throw a pebble into a pond, except to the center of it as opposed to away. And I ended up rolling over onto my back, and after I did that, I felt this incredible pull and this feeling of energy all of the sudden, and was completely paralyzed. And I was laying back looking up, and as I felt this feeling and this energy that I'd not felt in any other night terror but was completely paralyzed by, I felt myself get pulled up and out, and as I was pulled away, I saw myself leave the house, leave the planet, like just was completely pulled somewhere I can't even describe, and the feeling was almost a feeling of like pain. It was like what I would imagine being beamed up in like a transporter would be, where every part of your body's just pulled away. But I end up paralyzed like this, and as I'm laying there, in my vision, that purple disc had turned like clear, and inside of it I saw these two white small figures with black eyes, and I couldn't quite see their entire bodies. They were, behind some kind of what I figured was like a control panel for their little craft, but basically as I laid there, I just observed them, and at this point I didn't have the same kind of fear that I would have in a normal night terror, but it was definitely uncomfortable, and eventually I was able to move my left foot, which is very typical to how I escape most of those terrors. And at that moment, I remember I reached over and touched Erin, because I wanted to make sure that I was actually like awake and not asleep. And basically I felt her, and she was there, and at the time I didn't think anything of it, but she didn't move when I touched her. Normally if I touch her, she would move at night. But basically I rolled back over and was kind of afraid at this point to go back to sleep, because I didn't want to go back into this night terror, and I still actually had this kind of purple color and vision at the time as I closed my eyes. But I just said, okay, I'm gonna fall back asleep on my side and not lay on my back, so that I don't get stuck back in this weird night terror. And I rolled back over, and it wasn't but a few minutes later that I felt that sudden pull and that energy again, and I was trapped on my side. And as I laid there, that same purple color again in my mind was just this kind of disc-like craft with these two white aliens and their black eyes. And this time I had a little bit more fear because I just had this experience and I didn't want to have it again. And this time it lasted what seemed like forever. But all of a sudden I was able to not say it out loud, but I was able to like vocalize in my mind saying Aaron. And at that moment I remember rolling back over as I said that and touching her again. And that's when I came fully back out of it, at least I thought. But as I talked to Erin, she said that she didn't remember me moving or touching her or even turning on my phone at all. But the most interesting thing about this is that the paralysis that it came with had that feeling of just like you're being pumped full of electricity and every molecule in your body is going in a different direction or is agitated and you're frozen in it. It was just very, very unusual. But that was really random to have had because I hadn't had any night terrors in years at this point. We watched a documentary on night terrors. And then last night at dinner we had a conversation about it. Just a brief conversation about the documentary, and then I had these two very different but very intense night terrors. And the one thing that is just the most bizarre about them is that the level of awareness and intensity that you get when you're in that state of paralysis. And I was kind of describing it like in a dream, even if something really good is happening, it's not the same feeling that you get, when you're really awake. Yes, your brain may give you a good sensation or feeling towards something, but this is like 100 times, that in almost greater than something you feel in real life. Yeah, I don't know. Until you have it, I guess there's really no good way to describe it. But yeah, my most recent night terror. And what's today's?
November 1st, because it was
November
Halloween
1st,
yesterday.
Right. So it was Halloween night last night, which is kind of interesting as well. So, but yeah, surprise, surprise. Thought I was done having night terrors.
You weren't.
No, I guess not. I guess not. I wasn't.